Hey everybody, it's Will at Schedulefly, and this episode is sponsored by whiskey. Just kidding. We don't have any sponsors. But this is an episode that's been, we probably spent half the time talking about whiskey. I spoke with Kevin Barrett, and Kevin is the co-owner of Dram Draught in Raleigh, North Carolina. And they've also got a location in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they're opening one in Durham next. And they have... these guys have over 400 bottles of whiskey at each location, and it is phenomenal. Whiskey from all over the world, Ireland, Japan, Scotland, and, of course, from the U.S. So, luckily, Kevin was very kind, and we actually sipped on some whiskeys while we were talking, and I love whiskey, so we talked a lot about what whiskey is and how it's made and what kinds he likes and just all kinds of stuff. So we spent a while on that, and then we talked about his business and the bar business and lessons he's learned and what he loves about the business and what the challenges are. And so if you don't care anything about whiskey, then fast forward a little ways, maybe about halfway through. Otherwise, just enjoy. This was a lot of fun doing this. I hope I get to go do another one. I could literally talk to him about whiskey actually we did talk for another hour after we stopped recording. I wish I had that on tape. But, hey, I hope you all enjoy, and we'll have more episodes coming soon. Thanks. Here. All right, what's up, everybody? It's Will with Schedulefly, and I'm here in Raleigh, North Carolina today with Kevin Barrett of Dram Draught. He's a co-owner here. They have another location in Greensboro, and they're opening one soon in Durham. So we're going to get into all kinds of stuff. But we're sitting here. I will go ahead and say we're sitting here sipping on some Nikka Taketsura Japanese whiskey, and we've also got a Booker's 30-year bottle in front of us and a bottle of Old Grandad Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey from the 1980s.
Correct.
Wow.
National Distillers.
Freaking awesome. Damn. The Nikka is fantastic. So I like bourbon and whiskey, and so Kevin's like, I could probably ask him a million questions because this is his passion and his love, and he's got over 300 bottles of this stuff sitting in this place. This place is fantastic. Fantastic. Oh, my God. So, okay, well, tell me, give me a little background. I know you've been in hospitality a while, and you've worked at some – this is your first place you've owned, or did you –
No, not necessarily. It's the first successful bar I've owned.
A successful bar, okay.
Yeah. I owned a wine shop a long time ago.
Okay.
Back in Wilmington, North Carolina, and Drew and I briefly had a place that really wasn't taking off, so we unloaded that just as we were opening Dram Draught, and here we are.
So you and Drew is your partner, and y'all are both whiskey fanatics, whiskey connoisseurs?
Yes. Drew used to own a bar called Rally Point that's still around out in Cary, North Carolina. He sold that about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Still around, still going strong, but he sold that to concentrate more on the Dram Draughts.
Okay, got it. And y'all opened this one in, what, 3 years ago?
3 years ago,
next
almost
month?
Exactly, at the end of this month. So July 29th, 2016.
Yeah. Okay. And then, and you're moving, you're moving to a new location. Now, this is an old gas station. I see the SO.
Yes, old service station, and we're moving right around the corner on the same block to One Glenwood building, and that will be happening sometime this month, July.
So, okay, so you were leasing this, obviously, and then they're going to tear this down and build 2 Glenwood or whatever.
Unfortunately, they're going to tear it down, but fortunately, we have a good home, and I think once we get through the moving pains, we'll be better off.
Okay, so when you got into this place and you signed a lease, tell me about
long-term lease.
Okay, you had a long-term lease, but then they came and did the owner sell the building? Or
yes, the owner sold the building for development, and we had all kinds of clauses and things in our lease if that day happened, and we were a little heartbroken when it happened and a little surprised that it happened as fast as it did. But Heritage Properties, the developers over at One Glenwood, took care of us. They found us a new home, and they did all the things we asked them to do, basically. So, we're sad to see this place go, but we're excited for the new spot as well. New
spot's bigger. I know the new bar is a little bit larger. I mean, how many do you have bottles up there right now, or roughly?
I'm going to, roughly say 450.
God.
It's 450 different SKUs. So
450 different SKUs.
Yeah, probably. So 450 different products up there, and probably closer to like 700, 800 total bottles.
And then you've got a dozen, I see, draft beers, really good ones, full steam. Oh, man.
Yeah, we try to split between some of our local favorites and then just whatever's pouring well and whatever we're in the mood for, and try to get a nice variety, well-curated list. At the new spot, we'll actually have 14 taps, so not a huge difference, but that allows us a little more flexibility to do things like kegged cocktails or, right now we have a cider tap, we have a sour tap, we have a nitro tap. That takes up 3 taps already. So it's harder to do, wine on tap or keg cocktails or something like that. With a couple extra taps, it gives us a little more room to play with.
Okay. Well, how did you get into whiskey initially? I mean, you like drinking it, I know, but what
like
about
drinking.
it? Like, I mean, you obviously have a shit ton of knowledge about this, and I want to dive into that a little bit deeper. But I mean, what about it drew your interest and Drew's interest that enough to where you now have this place that has hundreds of them sitting there?
Yeah, I think number one, it's delicious. But back in the day, during the wine shop days, wine was my first love. Drank a lot of wine. Italian reds really got me into it, and French whites, and then everything in between. But back then, I drank a lot of wine and some beer, and not really a lot of liquor, period. And I remember Tuesdays was the wine rep day, and people would come in and just push whatever schwill they had on them on you, and you'd be tasting wine all day. And if you're professional, you actually do learn to spit and keep your wits about you. Your palate actually gets sharper as you taste, but your brain gets duller. So if you want to still be standing at 4 or 5 p.m. after tasting wine all day, you spit. But still, at the end of the day, when I'd leave the shop, my palate was blown out, So I'd go down the street to a restaurant I used to work at, and that's where I slowly started getting into liquor. And this is a long time ago now. But it started with Grand Marnier. I'd sip on Grand Marnier, just something to cut through the wine, and then gradually got stronger and stronger stuff, less sweet stuff. And then when I moved to Raleigh, probably 12 years ago, I worked at, 11 years ago, I worked at a couple spots and then ended up at a whiskey bar, bourbon bar. It's called Foundation. Worked there for about 7 years, helped run the place, and when I first started working there, we had a great bourbon list at the time, and I wanted to know about the products, so at the end of the shift, after we closed the bar, we would sit there and literally drink a quarter ounce of each bourbon and line up, let's say four or five, just doing a quarter ounce at a time. And you get to know whiskey real well that way, especially when you're comparing them directly.
This was just bourbons?
Yeah, mostly all bourbons, some Tennessee whiskey, some rye whiskey. It was all domestic products.
Okay.
And, of course, Foundation's still around, and they still do all domestic products. But that was, I remember, with the server at the time, Josh Gaines, he and I would close the bar often, and we wanted to know what we were talking about while we were selling to customers. So we would just do a little sip at a time, compare them, take notes, talk it out, see what we liked. And we went through all the whiskeys, and then we tried all the rums and just everything that we had on the back bar, a quarter ounce at a time. And that was the beginning of a real whiskey education.
Okay, gotcha. And all right, no, I'm going to ask some questions that are probably dumb to you, but I still learn about. I love drinking this stuff. I don't have a ton of knowledge, but like bourbon is like it's got to be 51% corn and aged and like new charred.
Yeah, so there's a few things.
That's like what defines.
The three big ones are it has to be made in the U.S.
Yeah, okay.
Not just Kentucky.
Made in the U.S.
If anyone tells you it has to be made in Kentucky, they don't know what they're talking about.
It's being made all over the place now.
Yeah, it's made in almost all 50 states right now. So it has to be made in the U.S. It has to be 51% corn or more in the mash bill, and it has to be aged in new charred white American oak barrels.
New charred
Those are the
white.
three big ones.
Okay.
There's a couple of things that has to go into has to come out of the still at a certain proof, and it has to go into the bottle at 80 proof or higher. I think it's 160. Is that right? 160 out off the still, or in the barrel at 160? No, off the still at 160. That's right.
Okay. And then new charred white oak. So you got to take
Yes.
a white oak tree and you cut it down, and that's
Yeah, you stave it, turn
And
it
then
into
you
a barrel. You give it
burn
a
the
char
inside?
that burns some of the wood sugars.
okay.
And the whiskey sits in the barrel. And the great thing about Kentucky, one of the many great things about Kentucky, why there's so much made in Kentucky, is the temperature change is so great in Kentucky that they have cold winters and hot summers, and that pushes the whiskey into the barrel, and it pushes it right up against the charred wood sugars layer, and pulls out some of that sweetness, pulls out the tannins, pulls out all the color, and I think some people say 80% of the flavor comes from the barrel.
From the barrel.
Yes.
Okay.
And the longer it sits in there and the more temperature extremes it experiences, the more it gets pushed in and out of that barrel and picks up more and more flavors and nuance. And that peaks, and it depends on where it is in the warehouse and what warehouse it's in, what level it's on in the warehouse. And a lot of whiskeys, a lot of bourbons are made to age, 6 to 10 years. Not every bourbon is made to age 15, 20 years. Sometimes they peak in that 6 to 10 range, and then they actually decline.
I was going to ask you about that because, like, you hear the age and all that kind of, but a lot of times it doesn't necessarily mean that it's better just because it's older with bourbon.
Correct.
Is that true with wine too?
Yeah, some wines. I think some wines are definitely made to age, and when they're bottled, they're not ready to drink.
Yeah. Okay.
Some of them are peaking, as soon as you put them in the bottle. Some you want to drink in the first 5 years. Some you want to hold on to for 15, 20 years.
I see there was right there. I see a bottle that's FEW, F-E-W. Is that the acronym? Fruit, earth, wood. Is that what that's for, or is that?
No, I don't think so. I think I think that's. You could be right. I might be mixing up my stories, but I think that's actually the initials of the guy's children.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And that is FEW. If I'm not mixing up my stories, is the first legal distillery in Illinois since Prohibition, and it's right outside of Chicago. And somebody fact check me on that. I've forgotten more about bourbon than most people ever know.
I was going to say, I only...
It's
I had read about the whole fruit or what is it? Fruit earth
wood.
Maybe that's wood.
Fruit
is
earth
that
wood,
wine or is that?
I think that's wine, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's wine. Yeah,
Okay,
because the earth would be the terroir.
Okay. So whiskey is you're going to use either corn or wheat or
it's some sort of
barley,
fermented grain in a barrel.
Or rye
In a barrel.
In a barrel. Okay. So
I think that's the big umbrella category of whiskey.
Okay.
And then there's bourbon whiskey, Irish whiskey, Scotch whiskey, Tennessee whiskey, Canadian whiskey, Japanese whiskey. And each one has its own requirements. Some are more strict than others.
Okay.
And a lot of it is geographic. Irish whiskey has to be made in Ireland. Scotch has to be made in Scotland.
Scotch has to be made in Scotland. Okay. Who does it best? Who's your overall? Who do you tend to prefer? And I know that's personal, but
it's very personal.
Yeah.
In my heart, I'm a bourbon guy.
Yeah.
And it fluctuates a little bit. I'm a bourbon guy. I love rye whiskey. Definitely don't have anything against Irish whiskey or Scotch whiskey, but my tendency would be to lean towards bourbon and rye, and venture off into Irish whiskey and Scotch when the mood suits me.
Gotcha.
When the mood strikes me.
Now there's do you have Buffalo Trace?
Currently, possibly. It's been hard to get in Wake County lately.
It's been hard to get it. So I went to the ABC store a few months ago, and I walked in and I said, "Can I have a bottle of Buffalo Trace?" I was going to buy it for a buddy for his birthday. And the guy sat there. He goes, "You like Buffalo Trace?" I was like, "Yeah, I like it." He goes, "So you've had it before?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "What?" He goes, "Hold on a second." And he goes in the back, and he comes back out and he hands me a bottle. He goes, "Look, It's so hard to get. I won't put it on the shelf because I don't want somebody to buy it accidentally. I want somebody to know what they're buying and come in asking for it. And I was like, okay, man, cool. Well,
It's nice of them.
yeah, I know it's an ABC store, but yeah, that's so some of the stuff is I mean, you've got some stuff that's like this has got to be Old Granddad.
Yeah, so the Old Granddad is still one of the decent brands that is readily available at a good price. But what we have here is Old Granddad from the 1980s. I don't have the exact year on it. We have a whole vintage section. And if I don't know the exact year, I can usually narrow it down to just a few years. So this is from 1980 to 86. I couldn't get the exact year on it, though. But it's from National Distillers, and that's a distillery that doesn't exist anymore. It's kind of the heyday of Old Granddad. The great thing about these vintage whiskeys, for me, it's a little bit of nostalgia. We had a bottle of Hill and Hill bonded bourbon from the 1940s, and that one may have been the best whiskey that I've drank in the last few years, period. The last 3 years.
Really?
Yeah, it was just amazing. And part of it is, you think about it, that's like World War II whiskey. It was distilled during World War II, bottled sometime in the mid-40s, and then luckily somehow unopened and undamaged for over 70 years. And whiskey, once it's in the bottle, it doesn't change the way wine does, but it does change chemically a little bit over the years. So if we tasted a bottle of Old Granddad today and Old Granddad a year from now, and one was just newly bought and one had sat on our shelf for a year unopened, we wouldn't notice a difference. After 20 years, you probably notice a difference. After 70 years, you definitely notice a difference.
Yeah.
Some of those tannins fall out and the flavors change. The Hill and Hill was just so rich, had like a 90-second finish. Plus, the corn was different 70 years ago. The whole production process was different 70 years ago. I might be telling myself a fairy tale, but I just, there's a little bit of romance in it, thinking about the lives that have come and gone in between that period of time, and the people that actually made it are probably no longer with us, and there's just a whole lifetime in that one bottle, and it tasted just amazing. It was amazing.
What happened? You drank it all?
Yeah, we drank it all. Well, we sold a lot of it, and it was one of those bottles that we didn't sell very cheap. We sold it an ounce at a time for a fair price, and then every once in a while, it's one of those things that's so good you want to keep it all for yourself, but you want to share it with everyone.
Yeah, right.
So when it got towards the end, we had literally an ounce maybe sitting in the bottom of the bottle. It's also one of those bottles that when you're finally done with it, you tear up a little bit.
Yeah.
There's only a few of those, but there was about an ounce left, and we shared it. Drew and I and one other person shared it, and it was something to share with somebody that was really into it, really impressed by it, and really enjoyed it.
You just mentioned Old Granddad. I mean, what's like a good? Because so much of this, I know, sometimes it's marketing. Like, what's a really good one you can get at an affordable price? You could get like an everyday kind of thing that is still just.
I think it depends on what you're going to do with it. Some brands are really versatile. Some I think are just made for a very specific purpose.
Sipping. Like, I just like to
sipping.
have it neat and sip like we're doing right now.
Let's say $30-ish and less is Buffalo Trace if you can get it. Elijah Craig Small Batch is great. Eagle Rare, a little on the lighter side, but great. And that might be a little bit more than 30, but those are all great. If you're going to make an old-fashioned, I think Evan Williams 1783 from Heaven Hill is just a steal. It has all the great, perfect flavors that should be in an old-fashioned. You're adding just a little bit of sugar and a little bit of bitters, and you're adding a little bit of water and chilling it down. You're like smoothing out a couple of those rough edges, but all that great flavor still comes through. I think that's like a $15 bottle that was made for old-fashions.
Old-fashioned. Okay.
Everyday old-fashions.
I love it. I'm going to try it. Yeah. All right, let's talk about I could go on all day about this, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the business side of this. So you opened 3 years ago. You had run a wine store, but now you've got this business you and Drew do with, a lot of moving parts. What have you learned about? And we were talking about this off mic beforehand. We were talking about the duality of you've got the drink itself and how well the drink is made and how much the bartender knows and all this stuff, and then you've got the hospitality piece of this, and you've changed opinions a little bit on that over the years. Tell me about that, on which is more important.
Well, it sounds like you're talking about Kevin Barrett's 5 pillars of service.
Bring it. I want to hear that. Yeah.
So I really do talk about this in training sometimes, and I switched up the order. And the important thing is, it really is all about service. The first thing is when people walk in that door, they want to see somebody smiling, or at least not mean mugging them when they walk in.
Yeah.
So number one is smile. Be welcoming when people walk in. Number two is you should actually welcome them. Put a menu in their hand as soon as you can. If you can't get it in their hand right away, at least acknowledge them. Say hello, how are you doing, what's up?
As if somebody came to your house.
Exactly, yeah, and that's really what it is. If you can't have a party at your house and be a good host, you can't be a good bartender.
You shouldn't be a good bartender, okay.
So that's 1 and 2, and those could be mashed together, but I think that really the first impression is the way you look at a person when they walk in your door. If you're sitting there on a stool reading a book and somebody walks in, they're going to feel like they're bothering you, and at best they're going to stay for one drink and then get the hell out of there. So you should be behind the bar, you should be happy, you should be welcoming your guest. You should verbally, acknowledge them. And then, 3 used to be our product, which is drinks for us, cocktails specifically. The bourbon and the whiskeys do their own job, right? All the liquor on the shelf does its own job. The beer does its own job, but we select that pretty well. But the cocktails, that's our product. Number 4 is service. And I switched that because service is actually most important. I begrudgingly admit that. I thought that, my cocktails were just so great that's what was winning everybody over. But, great service makes a mediocre drink good. It makes a good drink great. Bad service makes every drink bad. So
yes,
it is service, then it is your product. And then 5 would be, the ambiance, which is all the things I just mentioned, plus lights, temperature, and music.
Well, it's funny because there's that set, putting a bad taste in your mouth. Like, I mean, it's kind of what that, like, bad service.
Yeah.
It kind of does. Like, you
it
could give them some
does.
freaking Pappy Van Winkle or whatever, and they're like, man,
doesn't matter.
this
No,
guy's a dick and whatever. I don't want to, screw him.
If you were playing $20 or $200, you'd be overcharged. You'd be in the wrong mindset to enjoy something.
Yeah.
And there are some people that are just great at it every day. There are some people that are great at it sometimes, and there are some people that just can't do it.
The when you were mentioning the story of is a story a lot of times a big, like, do you and your staff really try to learn the stories of these because that you can convey to the customer, because that sometimes makes, like you just told me about this guy, Taketsura, who went to Scotland.
He went to Scotland, yeah.
When
he brought his. Probably in the 1920s or early 30s, and then he came back to Japan in the 1930s and brought all the knowledge that he learned back to Japan, including, I think, the coffee still. That was, I think, I mix all this stuff up now. I drink a lot of whiskey. But I think the coffee still is actually an Irish still that he learned how to design when he was in Scotland and whatever, in the UK. And I think, I think that the juice in the bottle has to stand on its own.
Yep.
But it seems like every new whiskey, at least that comes out today, has a story, whether it be true or not.
Right.
Have a story.
There's some marketing in that. Yeah.
Oh,
sure.
yeah, and that's fine. If you have something to endear people to it. For me, I think that most important is how it tastes and the price point. It's all these fancy expensive whiskeys are great, but is it is an $80 bottle really twice as good as a $40 bottle?
Right.
And when am I going to spoil myself on that $80 bottle? It all depends. I think you're right that most whiskeys that come out now have a story, and it's great to know that story and share that with your guests. The more information you can share with your guests, the better. An educated guest is the best guest.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it interesting. Like that story about him doing that, and you were saying, and now we're only just now drinking this stuff. Like, all these years later, like that's makes that even more interesting. You almost, you start thinking about that as you're drinking it, and there's like this. That's fascinating.
I think a lot of people think Japanese whiskey is a new thing, and it's not a new thing. It's just new to the States, or new to the mainstream states, I guess. And probably in like the past 10 years, it's really started to take off here.
That's good.
It's still hard to get, especially in North Carolina, but it's if you can find it, it's worth trying.
Well, tell me. So you've come to this stubborn realization that service is such a big part of this, and you said you've gotten better over the years at getting the right types of people. What are you looking for? How do you find them? How do you keep them?
I think back when I was behind somebody else's bar, I really tried to own it. Like when I was back there running the bar, it was my bar.
Your bar,
yeah. In a respectful way. Like I'm going to run this place well. I'm going to treat my guests well, the same way as if I had a party at my house. I try to look for people like that actually take pride in their service and in their reputation in this business, and you try to look for decision makers, people that will make a decision and let you know what that decision was, and can take criticism if you say, well, that was great, but next time you should have done it like this.
Right.
People that ask for permission, or people ask for forgiveness, not permission.
You give them the autonomy, but they're willing to accept when you go, hey, man, I hear you, but constructive criticism, why don't we try this instead?
Yeah.
They're not going to flip out about it. Okay, that's good.
Because most of the time, the place isn't on fire. Most of the time, there isn't a brawl here. Most of the time, things are going just fine. There's little things that we can fine-tune. And, when you put the right people in place that are making the snap decisions, because that's what it is behind the bar. You're making a decision constantly. You got to cut somebody off. You got to serve this person before that person. You got to tell your bar back or your server to do something else. You got to make, hundreds of those decisions shift, and you just need somebody that's willing to do that, and most of the time they make the right decision.
Got to have a lot of self-confidence to do that.
Yes, I think that's true for sure. I think you have to have a lot of self-confidence to stand behind that bar with, 10 tickets behind you while you're making 10 drinks, and you have 10 more people staring at you from across the bar waiting for you to look up to take their order.
Not
you
to
can't
panic.
quite do it yet.
Right.
Yeah, so you just got to stay cool, and you got to have the confidence to do that.
So when did Greensboro open?
Last September. So
last September.
About 9 months ago.
Okay.
10
Tell
months
me
ago.
about what's changed for you having two, and then now you've got a third on the way. How has your role changed and Drew's role changed? And
well, I think I drive a lot more now.
Greensboro's like, what is it, like an hour and
15 minutes.
Okay.
It's not bad. And I think that the good thing about Drew and I is there's two of us. That helps a lot. And I think you have to start to get to the point of delegating things before you start expanding. You have to accept delegation. You have to put together a good team all around. I mean, you need a good accountant, good bookkeeper, good lawyer, good business partner. You need good people working at all locations, good managers, and you have to be able to delegate it and accept that not everybody's going to do everything the way you want it done 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But if they get it 85% right, you're killing it, you know?
Yeah.
85% right it's a home run.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, that's winning. And even if, nobody's going to do things exactly how you're going to do it, but as long as they're doing it well, doing it close, then I think you're winning. Standards, you don't compromise on standards, but the actual steps that are taken to achieve those standards might be a little different, and that's fine.
Drew, so you and Drew are partners. Partnerships can be hard. How does it work for y'all?
I think it works remarkably well. We each have our relative areas of expertise, I think, Drew's been on the business side for a long time, and I've actually been behind the bar pouring whiskey and making cocktails and designing cocktails for years. So those two things just meet in the middle real well. And I think we mostly agree, and if we don't, we talk through it in a way that, in the end, we end up both agreeing, or one person says, well, I don't feel strongly about it. If you feel strongly about it, then we'll do it that way,
Yeah.
So I think it's good communication, good compliment to each other, and yeah, we're usually both on the same level.
Well, hats off to you, because you kind of casually went through this, and it sounds like you do really well with that. And the partnerships are tough for a lot of people. It's hard, and you sounds like you'll have a good formula. So that's
I think so.
That's a good thing. You've got Durham opening. You're kind of in the early stages with that.
Yeah, we'll say we're in the early to mid stages.
Early to mid stage. Do y'all have investors?
Yes, different investors for each location.
Each location.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Now, are you leasing in both the other?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely, leasing everywhere for now.
Leasing everywhere for now. That's okay. Got it. Do you intend to buy at any point? Have a look, or do you?
I'd like to. We'll see. We'll see how it works out. That's I think another step. Of actually owning the real estate that you're have your business on. I think that would be great if the opportunity presents itself. I think we'll try to do that. I think that's getting harder and harder to do, but we'll see.
You're just going one at a time, and do you have a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, or are you just...
No, for now we're one at a time. I think 3 was a big milestone for us, so we're going to get to 3 and then reformulate what we're going to do next. I think. Sure. I think once we get to 3 and we operate 3 successfully, then there's a lot of different directions we can go.
Yeah, especially since you've been at it for 3 years now, and so operating 3 successfully is a big...
Yeah.
That's a big step.
I think the first one was a big step, and that was just kind of proof of concept, right? Like people like it. We're actually doing a good job. We're, providing a service or product that people actually like. Having 2 was a big deal, and just proving that we could do more than 1. If we can do 3, then that's a whole nother step, and then we'll see if we do 4, 5, 6 after that, or just work on 4, or what happens after that. We'll see.
Do you have, are there things that have happened that you did not expect that were, I guess, major surprises to you in this process? Or have you been in the business long enough that nothing's really come as a surprise? I
wouldn't say on the, as far as like the operation of the bar, I can't really point out any major surprises. There's definitely a learning curve, right? When you step from being a bartender or bar manager to actually being the bar owner, and all those numbers are your numbers, right?
Yep.
I would say my biggest surprises were the construction side and the build-out side and permits and licenses and all of that, and just the incredible delays and headaches that you can run into with that for a variety of reasons.
That are outside of your control.
And there's so many moving parts and so many people involved. It boggles the mind sometimes. And that's kind of what we're running into in Durham right now, unfortunately.
Are you, who have you learned the most from? Somebody around here or somebody elsewhere, whether it be about whiskey or whether it be about running a business? Who's been somebody that you would consider maybe a mentor, or somebody you've taken things you learned from them and brought them here?
There are so many, many, many people that I've worked with over the past 10 years in this town that I've learned from. And these are people that worked for me, that I worked for, or that we just worked together, and sometimes all 3 of them.
Yeah.
And this goes, this isn't just in the last 10 years. Man, I remember 20 years ago being a server out in Washington State and working with a guy named Mike Toll, who taught me so much about service and just being a great server, selling fancy bottles of wine and fancy cuisine, and just taking it up to another level of thoughtfulness and preparedness and actual hard work and pride in what you do. So there's so many people. Yeah, locally, Alex Flynn is great. He is a rep for Copper and Kings now. He's regional rep for them. Matt Bettinger and I worked together at Foundation. I worked with him over at Seagrace. He's got his own bar out in Cary now, Sidebar. He's great. I've learned so much from him. I hope those guys have learned from me as well. Back when we opened Foundation, Andrew Shepard, I learned a lot from him. I hope he learned at least one thing from me. And so many others. There's so many people. It's just, there's always an opportunity to learn from somebody that you're working with, working for, or that's working for you. And, most of that time is a positive lesson. Every once in a while, it's a lesson of what not to do.
Well, but both, and that's right. And what I like about that, I love that philosophy. I share that philosophy, by the way, that particularly learning from people that work for you. I mean, some people would say, I know the right way and do it my way and whatever, and you're looking at it like there's something you can learn from everybody you come across almost, and the learning what not to do. I mean, that's sometimes
Absolutely.
one of the, those stick almost more than learning what to do sometimes.
That's true.
So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted. Oh, yeah. Tell me about so you and Drew, if I read this correctly, went and became certified executive bourbon stewards. What does that mean?
That's right.
That sounds like a badass title.
It is a badass title. It was great. We went to Kentucky and had a great time and toured around a few different distilleries, met some great people, Jimmy Russell and the whole Russell family, actually, and Bernie Lubbers and, a bunch of people. And while we were there, we sobered up for a day and went to take a course at Moonshine University. It's right in the center of Louisville.
Moonshine University.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, it was a great class. So it was a couple days, all day long, and there's a little bit of drinking involved in it too, but it's spaced out pretty well, and it's very educational. The greatest thing about it was they actually have this small distillery on site, so we got to mash our own grain, distill our own grain, and then taste it coming off the still, the heads, hearts, and tails, which was just awesome to me. If you've been at a distillery tour, I think when Drew and I go to a distillery tour, we might get a special tour, but if you can taste what's coming off the still at the time, it's amazing. But to actually taste it progress through the heads, hearts, and tails, taste the difference, see the difference, smell the difference, it was great. And part of the test that we took was actually just taking a smell test and calling out the heads, hearts, and tails. Of course, we got that 100% right. We took a written test that was, I don't want to make too much out of this, but it was open book. Drew and I put our books away and took the test. We're a little competitive. We finished. We were the first people done. I got 100%. He got 96. That's right. I won. And we did a blind tasting, which was great. And this was kind of teamwork. You had like teams of 4, and you were supposed to taste the whiskeys and come up with a flight idea for it. Like, why would you present these 3 whiskeys as a flight? 3 or 4, I forget what it was. I think it was 3. These are all actually similar, and we're going to taste them, or they're all different. That's where we're tasting them against each other. Just present some sort of, intelligent thing about the 3 whiskeys that you tasted. And you were also supposed to call out what whiskeys they were, which is so hard. I think it's hard for everyone, but it's hard for me. Once a blue moon, I can taste a whiskey and call it, and that has just got to be something that I'm just so familiar with, or have had recently, and I just know it. I know the taste. It's really rare. So we had 3 whiskeys, and our team called out the proof of each whiskey correctly, but we got the whiskeys wrong, and I was so frustrated because the first one was Pennypacker bourbon from Kentucky that I'd never tried before. It was 80 proof. I called it out at 80 proof. I was thinking it was Jim Beam, but and then I built everything off of that. So I called it 80 proof, 86 proof, 92 proof. And got all the proofs right, but didn't get any of the whiskeys right. They said that was the first time that happened, though, that somebody got all proofs right.
Ah, yeah, the proofs would be...
Well, it's the first
because if
clue,
you haven't actually
right?
had the brand, you have no clue, but the proof is... That's pretty...
I guess that's where, when I was trying to figure out what each whiskey was, I I went by proof first. I was like, well, if this is 80 proof, maybe it's Jim Beam, because Jim Beam's 80 proof. Maybe, this is 86 proof. Maybe it's Evan Williams, because that's 86 proof. Or Evan Williams 1783, I thought it was. And then the last one I thought was Elijah Craig, which is 92 proof. I was wrong about the brands, but I was right about the proof, so I was on the right track, I think.
Are you? I want to ask you one more thing. Are you guys? You gonna have your own distillery at some point?
Yes. One day when I have more time and money than I need, I'll have my own distillery. Maybe Drew and I will have a distillery together. But I used to say the same thing about bars. I said I'd own a bar when I had more time and money than I needed, and here I am.
Yeah.
I have no time, not enough money.
Yeah, not easy to get those started, huh? Not inexpensive.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have interest in it. It would be something down the road, though, I think.
Well, doesn't have to be in Kentucky, right? I mean,
No.
North Carolina's got some pretty intense, summers and winter extremes.
Absolutely, and we have some good brands coming out in North Carolina, and I think...
What are some good ones out of North Carolina? All of them, probably.
Yeah, all of them.
I hear you. There's too
not
many,
all of them, but some of them, and there's some really good ones that have come out in the last few years. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I'll tell you one that I like. I saw it up there. Where is that stuff? I have some at home. Defiant.
Mm-hmm.
I like that stuff.
They've been around for a while.
He's in the mountains or something like that.
Mm-hmm. They have an interesting story.
Yeah. The story. Yeah, I read their story. I was like, okay, what is this now? Yeah. All right. Cool, man. Dude, I appreciate this. This
It was
is
my
fun.
pleasure.
This is fun. No, whoa. Okay, wait. We haven't tried the Bookers or the old Granddad yet.
Oh, yeah. We're going to keep drinking? We can do that.
Yeah. That's Luke over there. He's one of my buddies. He's a phenomenal filmmaker, and he's done all of our film work that we've ever done. He's done it.
Really? Will he take a look at my script?
Huh?
Just kidding.
Yes. Story of the no, man, absolutely. Well, let's do it. Yeah, I want to try some of this stuff. Well, look, I appreciate it. This is awesome of you to take the time to do this, man. Highly educational, a lot of fun. Really appreciate it. We're stoked at Schedule Fly to serve y'all. This is just, and this place is, if you like whiskey, this place is heaven, folks. So if you're anywhere near Raleigh, check it out for sure. Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.